Hey guys, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and I'm trying to keep up with all these living world style games as they're literally living and as they are up and coming. It's really exciting to kind of review the publishing process that actually goes into it. Like, are they doing events? Or, what are the trailers like and stuff like that? And right now we're talking about a game called Corepunk, a game that I celebrated, oh my gosh, so hotly actually with their first trailer, because a lot of the times trailers are just fluff. They're just like, hey, we exist, it's a game, and you get a general gist, but Corepunk really immediately in their first trailer answered a lot of questions that I personally had about this game, coming from games like Albion Online and other action RPGs as well, and I think a lot of people really appreciated it. Stuff like, is there going to be verticality in the gameplay? Is it truly open world? Is it going to be invisible walls? Stuff like that. And overall, the pace of the game and the hardcoreness of the game too, because you even saw, like, people were dying in the trailer. Like, it let you know that this game's going to have some difficulty. But there was one problem that kind of arose from this transparency, and that was the speed of the game. That was mainly, like, a lot of people were like, oh, this is a really cool game, interesting. And there were a few things like, oh, well, the gear is kind of weird, the fact that everything's cosmetic, but, the main thing that everyone's talking about is the speed, the pace of the game. In an era where we have games emulating League of Legends and other action RPGs that are so bombastic, like you can't even see what's going on the screen, fireballs, spawning creatures of fire that shoot fireballs, you have a game like this, which is very almost Dota inspired and harkening back to maybe very old school, sandbox action RPGs, or just RPGs in general. It's so slow paced that you could almost, it's hard to call it an action RPG. In fact, people called me out on that. They're like, this isn't an action RPG. So, this game, its pace, it's slow, and we have 15 minutes of footage from IGN, which I'm not going to talk over the entirety of it. I don't like stealing footage or anything like that, but this is the news, guys. We got to talk about it, and I am too excited about Corepunk, so please forgive me. As soon as I get my hands on these games where I can buy it, thanks for the donations and the Patreon, then I will actually cover it like that. But we can see from the footage that this issue that we are seeing with the game is by design. The game is going to be slow paced. That was something that we theory crafted, or people kind of saw from the footage. Oh, was that just low level stuff? Is that really how the game's going to really play? Oftentimes MMOs, especially their first trailers, aren't exactly indicative. What? That's a word. Anyways, of it doesn't really indicate what the gameplay is really going to be like. If maybe it's not the core gameplay. It's not really generally like how good players are. But it does look like the general open world gameplay is going to be an emulation of Dota 2. In fact, a lot of what I'm seeing with the Fog of War being very thick, very shallow, and not really revealing too much. The overall pace of the game, the character animations, the number of abilities we have, it just looks like Dota. It looks like Dota. Now, for me, I'm going to give you my feelings on that style of gameplay. I'm fine with it. I play stuff like RuneScape, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. There can be definitely some depth with gameplay mechanics, with that sort of pace of game, even if it's not combat mechanics. This is a sandbox game, but it does seem like it is going to have bossing. It is going to have open world PvP. It is a big focus of the game, and there seemingly are some abilities that could be exciting, but nowhere near to the level of Albion Online. So Albion is going to be the sandbox game inspired by League of Legends combat. This is going to be the sandbox game inspired by Dota 2 combat. But this is where I am worried. So the difference, just clearly, because I do play Dota 2 and League of Legends very heavily, the difference between Dota 2 and League of Legends is one is built like it's skill shots, it's fast-paced, it almost feels like a fighting game most of the time, and it is just much quicker, snappier, and it's more focused on mechanical gameplay. That's physical, actions per minute, button presses, stuff like that. That's really where it's focused on. That is League of Legends. So that's Albion Online. You got leaps and skill shots and all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's really focused on that brawler and fighting style mechanics. But this game, Corepunk, being much slower based, is going to be, it should be more focused. See, this is what it should be more focused on abilities that are like weirder. It's hard to explain, but Dota 2 just has like their abilities, like one ability is basically like a whole page of its effect. Or they have really weird niche effects, like you eat a monster and you get a totally new ability, stuff like that. Or it focuses on more strategic and tactical elements, where you have, my favorite characters are Nature's Prophet and Broodmother. So that's going to be characters that spawn multiple enemies or armies of enemies, and you have an RTS style gameplay. And it's really focused on a map-wide, kind of focus. Even though you are controlling just one unit or just a few units or something like that, it's really heavily focused on weird items, like Shadow Blade that makes you go invisible and blinking and stuff like that. Items in League of Legends aren't that epic. So the weight of the difficulty, the skill expression, and the way you play the game feels very different despite on the surface being the same genre, and obviously League of Legends is inspired by Dota, but they feel totally different when you really actually play them. So yeah, in League I play characters like Yasuo, Lee Sin, stuff like that. Most of you do too. And then in games like Dota, people like Meepo, and I like the more strategic characters in that game because that's the strengths of that game. So the issue now with this game being inspired by Dota is that for this gameplay is kind of generic. You have your rain of arrows, your cone attacks, you have your spin to win stuff, and that's going to exist in Dota 2 as well with the Juggernaut and Wind Ranger and stuff like that. You have generic abilities, but the way those kits are totally and fully evolved throughout the game, especially with the itemization, Juggernaut can get a Blink Dagger. Juggernaut can have the Shadow Blade. You can be a stealth character and an assassin as Juggernaut, or you could be this big brawler warrior. You could be a totally different character. And I can't tell the itemization is going to be like that in this game. If you guys played maybe older MMOs, especially like classic WoW, you could get an item and it would change how you totally play the game. I want to see that. So even if we do have generic abilities and stuff like that, hopefully we do have really ridiculous, itemization, but I'm not seeing that in the gameplay. It just looks really slow-paced. It just looks really generic. As well as the kit customization, we don't see how expressive that's actually going to truly be. Again, it just looks like a very generic, very slow-paced game. This basically, just from this gameplay, looks like a worse Albion Online, at least a very slow-paced Albion Online. So if you are going to have the slow-paced, please, I'm just going to have to come out and say this. The footage just isn't kind of good enough. It doesn't answer our questions well enough, like your first trailer did. And I think we're going to need to see classes like Necromancers and Summoner classes. If you don't have a Summoner class in this game, I'm sorry, I'm not going to play it. This style of game, we need Summoner classes. We're going to need, really ridiculous itemization where that Whirlwind can be like a fire, radiance, whirlwind, or, it does chain lightning. We need crazy modifiers like that, stuff that we would see in general classic action RPGs. We're going to need to see much more strategic gameplay as well. Maybe we can have scouting type of abilities or things that clear the fog of war. We even see that in League of Legends and Dota heavily. Abilities that we can actually shoot across the map, kind of similar to Ancient Apparitions Ultimate. Things like that change the gameplay, or even terrain modification. We need to see stuff like this that add to the strategic elements if you are going to have a game this slow-paced. If you're going to make the sacrifice of mechanics or strategy, then fine, perfect, absolutely. It works in Dota, and League of Legends made its sacrifices, and it works in that game. I love Albion Online for what it is, but it is lacking something, and if you want to compete with games like that, you need that extra element. So even though, New World is a different game and Black Desert Online is a very different game, you are still competing with those games. And obviously, for an action RPG MMO, even though it's a sandbox game, this is not very action-based, and so far we're not really seeing too much uniquity. So that's the one complaint, but it's still, I have to say, in the end, a lot of people are still looking forward to this game. It is very exciting. It does look polished. It looks like it could be fun, but at the moment, it doesn't have that zest. It doesn't have that spice that a lot of people want. So for me, please show us the summoning, show us, some ridiculous spell effects, give us some good crunchy stuff going on, so that we can have fun with the PvP, so that we can have fun jumping into these dungeons and stuff like that. Don't gotta go too ham, just give us some uniquity. That's it. Anyways, so that's my review of Corepunk. I think this game's gonna be pretty cool, but at the same time, I'm a little bit worried that it might turn out to be a little bit too slow for my tastes, since I do prefer games like League of Legends, like Smite, and then going into MMOs, yeah, I do prefer games like Albion Online, or even, the action-based gameplay of the World vs. World PvP stuff from Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2. But I'm totally hungry, I have to admit, I'm very hungry for a strategic-based PvP game. That's for damn sure, and a lot of people are too. But so far, it just looks like this is a slower game, not really rewarding us with strategic elements. But that's pretty much all I got to say, guys. Much love, friends and family. This was Corepunk, at least so far that we know, and this was just my opinion. Let me know your comments in below. Much love. See you in the next one.